Well, good morning, Representative Leigh Finke. Thank you for joining the DFL Daily Call. You represent State House District 66A in St. Paul. You're in your second term. Thank you for your service. Most importantly, as we've been teeing up for our viewers all week, we're really looking at all the legislation that leaders like you are putting forth to directly address the harm that the ICE presence in Minnesota has had on our communities, the chaos it's sown, and the fear, frankly, that it's really instilled in Minnesotans. And you have brought forward a piece of legislation that would unmask the ICE agents. As we've seen in all the videos, they cover their faces, they do not identify themselves, and you thankfully have brought forward this piece of legislation, and we'd love to ask you a few questions about it today. First and foremost, obviously Minnesotans in every corner of the state have seen the fear and harm caused by the masked, undertrained ICE agents in their communities. When you look at what's happened in our state, how would unmasking these ICE agents and requiring them to identify themselves bring accountability to these federal agents?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here with you, Richard, and everyone. I think there is just this idea that seems pretty straightforward that if you are going to be anonymously behaving towards the people in the community that you're terrorizing, if you are wearing a mask, you are going to do so with greater violence. There is a reason that no law enforcement agency in America is allowed to cover their faces while they're on duty. It is already illegal in the state of Minnesota for local law enforcement to wear face coverings while on duty. And we can see why, right? Like there are people on our streets. They have no identification. They don't wear law enforcement clothing. They're plain clothes. They're in a mask. And there is very little reason to have any public trust for such a person when you are facing an encounter like this. Also, it's just important to recognize that in 2026, the only way for us to be able to identify a person is to see their face. That is how ICE is identifying our community members, and it is the only way for us to know who is doing this. So if you are going to be on our streets harassing, kidnapping, killing members of our community, we have to know who you are. That is a part of the burden of the violence that is being done.
Absolutely. Your legislation seems like a pretty simple, logical ask. Show your face, mark your vehicle. But folks opposed to your legislation maintain that these agents need anonymity. What's your response to that? Who do you think actually this actually protects, and what do you wish more people knew?
I mean, the opposition that we're hearing is that, oh, these ICE officers are going to be doxxed if we are allowed to see their faces. And I would respond to that where I would say, if you are a law enforcement agent and you are behaving in such a way that you believe that anyone seeing your face is going to make them dox you, then your lack of public trust should take you out of the law enforcement business, right? We know that these agents, DHS agents across the board, they're receiving very little training. These ICE agents have almost comically low amounts of training. They are given anonymity. They're plucked from obscurity. It's like putting people on the internet into the real world and allowing them to behave with that same anonymity. So what I wish people knew, I mean, one of the things that people should know, and I covered this already, is that it is illegal to cover your face if you are a law enforcement officer in Minnesota. And I do not think people realize that, with some exceptions, right? For gas, for public health, there are reasons that we have masks. But we are able to govern all governments equally in the state of Minnesota, and we have an ability to pass laws like this and enforce them. So I think it's really important that people understand that this behavior is made worse by masks, which we know. We know why the FBI is not allowed to wear masks. No agency is allowed to wear masks. And we know that unmasking people changes the way they interact with others.
Absolutely. Well said. One of the things that we've seen in this whole experience with the retribution campaign from Donald Trump and the surge of 3,000 ICE agents is that it's really united Minnesotans, and Minnesotans have a sense of how the rule of law should work in our states. And I think we're all in agreement that weaponizing the DHS and these ICE agents to target and attack our communities wasn't really ever about law and order. Talk to me a little bit about how you've seen this play out in your own district, and how Minnesotans across the political spectrum should be united against this retribution campaign.
Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize that this is not about the immigration status of individuals here. And one of the reasons we know that is because Donald Trump sent an immigration enforcement army to the state of Minnesota because he was upset about fraud. And that's just logically, that makes no sense. If you're upset about fraud, you send accountants, you send people who can do fraud related enforcement. But that's not what he did, right? He sent people, 3,000 people, uh, specifically to terrorize our communities. We saw this in my district. I have a very diverse district. I represent St. Paul, Falcon Heights, Lauderdale, and Roseville. And, I have many constituents who are still, to this day, not leaving their apartments, not taking out their trash, completely reliant on others to make sure that they are able to live at all, without the fear of being abducted. Uh, and the response, right, the unifying piece of this, the thing that I think really, gives me a great deal of pride is that Minnesotans are who Texas always thought they were going to be, right? I saw somebody put that on the internet, but the idea here is that when the federal government overreached and sent literal military forces into the state of Minnesota, Democrats stood up to the federal government, and the Republicans here immediately folded. They immediately folded in, became really just an extension of authoritarian power. And they've always believed that they would be the ones to stand up to the federal government, but it's actually the Democratic Party of Minnesota who showed what it means to do that in a way that I promise you, Donald Trump and his cronies were not prepared for what they got here, right? And I find that to be incredibly powerful. It's not just Democrats, obviously, but it is the forces of people who believe in the rule of law. And if we are a state and a system of states, and we have a constitution that says the overreaching federal authority of this government cannot be accepted. And we showed what that looks like. And I'm incredibly proud of that.
Well, Representative Finke, we are working hard to try and get everyone we can to help push your bill that will require ICE agents to unmask themselves and identify themselves into law. I know that the House is tied 67-67. We always end our call with a call to action. What would you like us to do to help you get this across the finish line?
I mean, first of all, continue standing up for your neighbors, because we're not there yet. We're not back yet. This will end when our neighbors are back outside of their homes and at their jobs. But I would ask people to continue to just reach out to your House members, your senators. We can do things that are good. This is something we have the authority to do, and this is something we have the moral necessity to do. We cannot allow this terrorism to continue. It should never happen again. So continue to do what's right, continue to speak out, and make sure that we are not just letting people know who are currently elected, but electing people who understand what we need to do going forward.
Well said. And as you said earlier, this is simply trying to make sure that federal agents have to follow the same law that local police departments follow already. So we're not asking too much. Thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you being our guest.
It's a blast. I'm happy to be here anytime.